I'll see if I can find it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it's 5 past. I'm sure we'll have some more people sort of trickling in, but we'll get going, and I'll just do a bit of housekeeping and just talk about the agenda and kind of what's the plan for today. So we've got some great guests. I'm really excited to be talking all things DesignOps today. I'm very nerdy about it at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to kind of introducing our guests in a moment. We'll have about sort of 30-ish minutes of discussion. We've got some great topics. We'll see where the conversation takes us today. And we'll try and make sure we'll keep an eye on the questions in the chat and see if we can do some live Q&A at the end, maybe some troubleshooting. And then at 5:45 or quarter to, wherever you are in the world, we'll wrap up, and then we'll move to the Fearless community, where we can continue answering questions and we can have some dialogue. So I think Laura will share the community link. If you're not signed up and you'd like to join that chat, you can sign up during the session, and we'll make sure you get access to that before the end. And yeah, I think that's all of it. So yeah, I'll just move into introductions. So starting with myself, so I'm Josie. I'm an associate director at Fierce. I have recently moved into DesignOps from experience design, and this is a rather selfish endeavour today. I thought I'd pick the brains of some other people in the field, and I've spent the last few months kind of immersing myself and actually like figuring out what the hell my job is. Yeah, I hope that you'll all get some benefit out of today. And I'll hand over to our lovely panelists. So perhaps I can start with you, Laurent. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Cool. I thought you were going to do the intro for us. I didn't prepare anything. I have been working at Lloyds Banking Group in different roles over the past 12 years, believe it or not. And in the past 3 years, I've been leading in the people and capability space, in the design strategy and operations space. And I've seen the evolution of the design team grow and adopt different models for doing work, different frameworks, lots of things that failed, lots of things that were really successful. And so I'm happy to share what I've learned and my knowledge of design ops in this kind of like organization. We're a team of about like 300 designers now. It's pretty big. We still haven't cracked everything, but yeah, excited to be talking all things design ops today.
Great, thank you. And I'm just moving across my screen, so this is in no particular order, but Nikki, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nikki. I am a design ops director at Skyscanner. I've been there for 4 years. Our design team, well, in brand marketing, we're split at the moment. So in brand marketing, we're about 35, and in product design and research, I think they're up to about 65. So a bit smaller than Lloyds. I'm based in Edinburgh. I have 2 children. I enjoy long walks, and that's all I can think of because I didn't prepare. But I'm also really happy. I empathize with that feeling, Josie, of trying to figure out like, what the hell is my job? Because it's quite an emerging field. So I'm really happy to share anything that I know if it's helpful for the rest of the community. So thanks.
For sure. Thank you. And Beth, hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me today. My name's Beth Marrier. I'm the head of design operations at Handshake, which is a platform to launch your career for students and alumni, kind of taking their first step into that big adult world of getting a job. I've been with Handshake for about 3 months now. Prior to that, I was a design management director at Gensler, which is a global design firm. And again, really passionate about this topic, and so excited for our dialogue today.
Great. And I love that we've got a range of businesses that, you know, the scale of design teams, you know, from I think around sort of 23 up to 300 is really kind of interesting. And so I'm going to jump in and just ask the question, what is DesignOps? I know that, you know, Niels and Norman kind of talk about it being this orchestration of people, process and craft. And they also talk about kind of, you know, delivering value at whatever scale it is. But, you know, what does that mean? And perhaps, you know, what does that mean to our panel? Beth, you're off mute, so maybe I can kind of hand to you first.
Sure thing. So I'll start kind of philosophically. Design operations to me is the understanding that how your experience at work, your experience as a designer is just as important as what you design. And so design ops is all about that experience and how that's delivered in an organization, the processes and tools that you implement to aid your team, and just that constant pulse, keeping a constant pulse on the team and, you know, reacting and being proactive based on what you're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And how about you, Laurent and Nikki? Does that kind of resonate with you? Do you see any other kind of anything else you want to add there?
Nikki, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I think the Nielsen-Norman, definition, it's probably the one that's been around for a while. So I think it's a really good one if you want to look it up. But they definitely talk as well, and it resonates with me. It's kind of around 3 pillars around how you organize your team. So like, what are the roles? What is the structure? How are you going to collaborate? Like that kind of good stuff. And then it's around how you harmonize. So how will you work together? What kind of systems do you have? What are the processes, tools? And then how do you socialize that? So in addition to how you're going to measure it, how do you share success? How do you define what good looks like? How do you enable? And I think really something that resonates with me with what Beth said is that it's a lot about serving the people who make the product and the experiences and ensuring that they're having a really fun collaborative experience and they're doing their best work. So it's a lot about unlocking that like individual value to add to this like combined value, which in turn just kind of passes on to this great experience for the consumer ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. I think I recognize some of our own thinking from what you talked about, Beth, in terms of almost thinking about what is the, you know, end-to-end experience for a designer in the organization, from the moment they are actually, you know, being interviewed and onboarded into your company to being able to be effective and work, you know, having the right setup, having like the tools, looking after their career and their development, making sure that we create a right environment for designers to succeed with their peers in, you know, in our cross-functional teams. But, you know, we did a bit of work on our team purpose for the design strategy and operations team last year, because we didn't really have like a single like narrative, right? So you had like a design system team, you had a culture, people and capability team, you had a team looking at resourcing, and another one looking after research, operation, and tooling. And what we ended up with in terms of defining our purpose is we define it as such. We help improve people's lives by enabling great design at scale. Right. So the reason why we do it is to ultimately have an impact onto users and consumers and help solve problems for them. But we don't do the work directly, right? What we do, we enable other designers to do great work. And it's this like enabling piece that really design operation is about. And we can, you know, the way I think about it is for kind of like 4 pillars of like people, places, practice, and platforms. You can dig a bit like deeper into that, but that's how I like to like think about it. And then, you know, we can talk about, well, what does great design actually mean and how do you measure that? Mm-hmm. And when you think about like at scale, again, you know, how do you measure that? And is that really a success criteria or not? So yeah, that's kind of like high level view of my thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, one of the teams that I've worked with previously, I mean, when we were looking at like our kind of strategy and our reason for existing, it was to enable designers to design and like take everything out of their way that's preventing them from doing that, because that's the thing that they're highly skilled at, and that's the thing that's going to deliver value for the business, for the end users, you know. And so it's kind of taking it out. And also something else that kind of sprang to mind was that, you know, I think as a designer in my past, and I think probably many of us would have experienced this, is that we were probably doing a lot of that stuff on top of our daily, you know, design work as well. So I think really it's about taking all of that stuff and, you know, making a role out of it. Yeah, for sure. I guess why does it exist? Like what are the challenges that it solves, like more specifically? And we've spoken a little bit about kind of like people and processes and things, and also like how is it different to other ops that's out there? Maybe Nikki, I'll go to you.
You can see me jumping at the bit here. Well, I think what was interesting, just quickly on what we touched on previously, is that I think that DesignOps is going to be a bit different everywhere you go, because every business is different. So the different, like the challenges, they probably have similarities, but it's all going to be nuanced based on a lot of different factors, right? So I guess what I would say is I think DesignOps has existed for a long time, like specifically in marketing. You know, you have producers going back a long time in that space, but maybe not so much in the product world. And DesignOps as a term, it's not even a decade old, you know, so it's pretty new. But I think like the need for it has arisen, and it goes back to consumers again. It's because now everything's so digital, right? Like I remember 20 years ago when I first came to Scotland, I called my mom on a payphone once a week. I didn't even have a smartphone. So like, it's crazy when you think about the last like 10, 15, 20 years of development in the digital space and the way that people interact with brands and things they want to, you know, consume or buy or use. So anyway, geeking out slightly, but they really expect experiences now. And I think being able to do that at scale, so being able to make that consistent and have purpose is really difficult. And design is kind of at the heart of making sure that that happens. So like the main challenge I think for DesignOps is how do you design experiences, whatever they might be, how do you do that consistently, and how do you do that at scale and in a way that will benefit the individual, so like the employee, the team, the business partners, you know, and ultimately the consumer. And more practically, if I'm allowed to ramble, like I guess some of the things that DesignOps seeks to address that I hear over and over again is like lack of alignment, broken systems design, duplication of effort, like gaps in talent, or again, like, you know, individuals being expected to do 4 roles instead of the one they were hired to do, which is design.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think I remember having a conversation with you, Beth, around it's around kind of like there was something that you said about untangling the necklace, you know.
That's nice.
Yes. And I think to Nikki's point, like every organization is a different necklace that needs to be untangled. And
I love that.
you know, that I think when a design ops person joins an organization, that's what they're doing for at least for the first 90 days to 6 months is just untangling things and building efficiency. And to answer your question about why now for design ops, I think with the, you know, just the boom in digital product space, organizations are now realizing that design is really a huge differentiator when it comes to the success of a business. It's no longer product-led, it's design-led. And so even when you think about something as simple as like streaming services, you'll say ubiquitous as streaming services. You know, there's so many different platforms and they're all doing the same thing, like delivering content to your screen. But that experience of navigating through that platform, you know, that's the differentiator. And that's kind of design ops. When a company brings on a design ops leader, they're really showing the business and their customers that they really value their design team and see it as a key part of their business. And so I think that's why we're really seeing more of these roles come on board organizations now, is because design is finally like at the seat at that executive table, making really major business decisions and ultimately playing a big role in the overall success of an organization.
Yes, the infamous table. And I guess it's kind of, it's something that's perhaps, I don't know if it once was seen as a luxury, but it's probably I imagine it's going to start to be becoming more of a necessity, and sorry, was there something there? Did somebody?
Yeah. I think it's my daughter making noise behind the door. But apart from that, I think, there's a lot of like investment in design in a lot of companies, and you can tell that just from looking at the number of adverts on LinkedIn. Now, many companies are like recruiting for design talent, which has been, as Nikki and Beth said, driven by increased digitization of services and products. And as you start to recruit more people in your design organization, it becomes inefficient for everyone to take on tasks that could be like standardized or made more efficient. So a very clear example of this is research, right? So if you're a team of 5-10 designers, everyone can pretty much go and contact like a recruitment agencies, go through like the process of recruiting participants and doing research, right? When you get to a team of 50 or even 100, where UXers will be doing some usability testing, researchers will be doing primary research, and service designers will be also jumping in, you can't have like 30 different people go to the same recruitment agency, because it's going to breed conflicts, it's going to breed misalignments in terms of like priorities and who gets to be able to do research in a timely fashion and stuff like that. And so you need to organize that a little bit more with a system that you put in place for enabling the different areas of the organization to do research in a way that is safe, thinking about data and stuff like that, and delivers good quality. So that's the same for things like knowledge management, tooling, and so on. And so this is really the problem is trying to solve is how do we become more efficient and allow our designers to spend more time on doing work that is value adding as opposed to, some of the, processes and operational stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And it sort of, it's allows us, I think we have to be quite self-reflective, don't we? And it can become very meta because you're designing design, but there's something very satisfying, I think, in that, kind of working in this space. And I'm really interested, I want to kind of get to sort of maybe some like practical tips and things around kind of building out a design discipline, maybe from getting buy-in to kind of scaling. But before, I would love to kind of get your opinions on like, what are the characteristics and skills that somebody in DesignOps has, or that you think that they, should, are useful? Perhaps Beth, if I head over to you.
Sure thing. I think first and foremost, you have to be resilient. You have to get knocked down 9 times and get up 10. You're just constantly going forward with action. That is your job. And so resiliency, and also relationships and communication. The success of your role depends on your relationships with the people in your organization. So you have to be pleasant to work with. You have to, go out of your way to communicate with people, introduce yourself to people, and build those relationships. And then I would say third, you have to be willing to pivot, and recognize that planning is essential, but planning is also guessing, and so when you come up when your plan and reality are not matching, you have to be willing to pivot. And that's where some of that resiliency and that relationships come from. And you can put that into action, because when you have to pivot, you've got to get your whole team on board again. And so if you have those relationships and you're willing to just, keep moving forward, you can get people to follow. So that's how I think those three characteristics are really key for design ops leaders.
Yeah, and I think what you say about action, that's definitely very kind of relevant for me, and particularly someone coming from like a service design where I just want to like plan it all out and think about strategy, and I'm kind of being forced to starting to think, just be tactical, just do the thing, start the thing and do it, and then you can do more things. And so I've had to do a whole like context switching, but it's helpful to kind of bear that in mind for sure.
Failing fast is key. I fail at something every day, but I don't broadcast it. I just keep going. And so learn from it and then just keep it moving.
Yeah. How about you, Nikki?
That was it's going to be hard to follow that, because that was really good. But I would say definitely it's team taking care of business, TCB. So, you've got to be someone who likes to get stuff done. It can be very tempting and creative to stay in a world of academia and research and development and never quite get something live. So, you have to be really action oriented and coach people along the path to sort of take the next step, break it down. I think natural communicators. So I think when ops works really well, nobody even really notices it, but it's often when things go wrong and it's a challenging situation. So you need to find people who are really able to have those direct and honest conversations. And I think you have to have a passion for creative and the user experience, because let's face it, it's hard. There's much easier places to expend your time and energy. If you don't love it, you're probably in the wrong place. So I definitely think you have to have a passion for it. And I would say thriving in ambiguity, it can be really nebulous. So being able to navigate that ambiguity and like mold it into something that makes sense is really key. And something else I think is really important is most of the design ops people that I've worked with, they're really generous. They're very generous people, generous with their time. They don't have ego. They go out of their way to be supportive, to be proactive, to make the hard decisions. And they're constantly sharing, like, do you have a template that could do this better than what I have? Have you done a workshop in this way? How did you manage that stakeholder? It's a very sharing kind of collaborative place where nothing's that precious. Like, no, it's my workshop, I can't share that. So I think that generosity of spirit is really important.
Great.
Just to add to that, I think agree with all of that. Definitely to be action oriented and resilient and willing to get stuck in. I think a couple of things I would add to that is around being like an effective decision maker. So when you see a problem, think about not jumping in with your first idea and your own biases, but really widening the perspective and the options when it comes to try and solve the problem that you're looking at. Understanding the consequences of choosing a specific option, some of the implication trade-offs, and maybe even experiment with it to see if the proposal that you are recommending is going to work. So to that, I would also add systems thinking, because in an organization, essentially the way you have all these different pieces in your system around, the people, how you do work, how the teams are set up, interaction with, your product owners and your engineers and so on, or the internal policies that you have around, onboarding or data or risk. And this is famous quote, which says that, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you think that, well, in design, when we look at, team health or the kind of work that we want to be doing or how influential we are, well, this is essentially just an output of the system that we have at play here. So when you start to think about understanding the different system conditions and how you can change these to deliver a better outcome out of your system. So let me give you an example. A few years ago, we used to run a kind of like central model where you had a research team with like different like levels of seniority, and you had a UX team and a visual design team and a UX writing team. And we would deploy resources where the demands would be, and that worked for a while. Then as we scaled, we decided to move to an embedded model where instead of organizing by disciplines, we organize by squads. So we have a design lead in a value stream that manages and leads a team of multidisciplinary designers. Now, the model that we had was that the design lead would be like the sole line manager for the squad underneath. And it worked up to a point, but as we scaled, we realized that at some point you can't be an effective line manager and coach if you have more than 7 or 8 direct reports. And so this kind of like almost policy that we had of the design lead as a sole line manager of the squad isn't like sustainable anymore. And then it has downstream effects on ability to have great career conversation, ability to give feedback both ways, team performance, and so on. And once we identify that, then we think about, okay, well, how can we change that, and can we experiment with it to see if it delivers better results? So this is just like an example of applying this like systems thinking and trying to really identify the implication of making choice A or choice B and running with the best option, seeing what the results are, and then constantly adapting and evolving as the needs of your team and the organization change.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is that, as an organization shift, because you might be starting at, it might be a startup or it might be a business in transformation, but you can guarantee there's going to be constant change. And so what actually works for you, at one point is not going to be sustainable, for however much time. So you need to constantly be adapting and evolving. And I do feel like it has the potential to be quite reactive, because you're constantly sort of putting out fires and basically fixing problems when they arise, but I would also say to add to kind of, all of your points, that like the ability to prioritize as well and kind of focus on the thing that needs to get done first is also a good skill. Yeah. So we've kind of just hit the half hour. I mean, I've got more questions. This is a topic that I can go so far into. But I'm also kind of quite keen to, we've got quite a lot of people on the call, and I wondered actually, should we just open up for some Q&As? And I don't know if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can maybe kind of talk through some kind of live questions, or if you're building out your teams or you're facing some challenges, do you want to, and also feel free to raise your hand as well, or come on camera if you have a question. So what tools, Alan has asked you, what tools help you with your day-to-day? Who would like to take that one? Thanks, Alan.
Sure, I'll jump in. At Handshake, we're a Google Suite organization, so I use a lot of shareable spreadsheets, shareable docs, and that's how we're collaborating on kind of text and roadmap planning. We also use Asana for organizing our collaboration between brand design and the marketing teams. And then we're also using, our product teams plug into Jira with our engineers. And then when it comes to creative tools, we're using Figma and FigJam and Miro, Whimsical. We're in a very much in a scaling phase right now at Handshake. So we're trying on lots of different tools and seeing how they fit and upgrading when our team gets a little bigger. But those are a couple of things we're using.
I can go next if you want. So we're not that dissimilar. I'd say at Skyscanner, we're still in the Microsoft ecosystem. So we've got, Microsoft and PowerPoint, sadly, because everyone likes Keynote better and Google Slides, but you have to keep everyone in PowerPoint, otherwise it goes everywhere. Anyway, obviously really active in Slack for like day-to-day communication. We're in ClickUp, which is a fantastic project management tool that I'm a big fan of, versus Asana, which is also really good though. Jira integrates as well with all of our the product work that we do, and we do ad hoc requests through that. And then there's quite a lot, probably too much Confluence, just in terms of documenting and making sure you've got all the links you need, like the center of a spider web. Basically, that's how I use Confluence, where you go to the page and you've got every link you need because it might live in many different locations, all the information for that project. Miro also all the time. Got a lot of love for Miro.
Yeah, and actually, we use Notion at the moment internally, but that spiderweb analogy is kind of spot on. And some of the things that we're doing internally at Fierce and Phyllis is really just documenting all of our stuff. And so that's all the stuff that I've got to start doing soon. But yeah, for sure, you need that kind of like links to everything. I'm going to jump to. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say creatively, like Figma's amazing. And then we still have Adobe for a bunch of like more marketing things, particularly like the editing and video tools. And yeah, we have our backpack is our design system.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on the business, the teams. You've got your kind of craft tools like your Figmas and things, and where your design system living. And then I find a lot of the tools that actually DesignOps people are using are the communication sort of tools and platforms and things as well. But of course, that is as also part of like the management of DesignOps is the kind of tools and where do you put everything. I'm going to jump to another one here. So Debbie said that, she's often in a position where she has to have really difficult conversations and telling people things that they don't want to hear. And are there any top tips for navigating these? That's a great question.
Could we maybe hear from Debbie a little bit to understand a bit more context? And is there anything like a specific example would be great?
Yeah, I think it's just often when you're in an ops role, as an example, everybody wants everything now. There's just the realities versus what people kind of desire. So, and obviously you kind of come at it from the angle of presenting the alternate solutions in the context around why it might not be possible and what you can do instead. But you obviously kind of come up against really strong senior characters. So yeah, I guess it's just about how, if you're telling someone something they don't want to hear, like, their idea isn't feasible within the budget, or it's not going to go out when they want it to go out, or they can't have that extra round of feedback, like how you kind of navigate that.
Well, with diplomacy, with diplomacy intact, but also I think, sometimes in design, depending on how the organization is set up and who is quote unquote like paying for you, it can feel like you are a service provider to someone else, right? And actually, we are a stakeholder as much as anyone else, and we have the right to ask for what we want and be clear around our expectations and what we can and can't do. But I think you're doing the right thing in terms of like, well, you asked for this and it's not possible, but here are some of the options, and you can decide which option you want to go for. And maybe they can help you come up with like a different option. So thinking about like collaborating to find a way of agreeing on an option that would work for people. Trying to find like that win-win, and going at it with the angle of collaborating and crafting this together, as opposed to going in kind of like opposition. After that, if they are being like really difficult, and unprofessional about it, then, you know, can always like escalate to people above them, I guess.
Yeah, I'd also really like to add something around, you know, all of the skills and characteristics that we said earlier, you know, that the people being generous and all of this thing. Somebody like that, if you don't have strong boundaries as well, then you can very quickly get flooded. And I think there's something that you said, Debbie, was that, you know, everybody wants everything now. And, you know, I think it's also up to us as practitioners to kind of, you know, be okay to say no and get comfortable practicing saying no. And I know, you know, I've had this conversation before and heard about, you know, the design ops is often kind of considered like the team mum, and you know, and but you have to be firm as well, and I guess there's kind of like, you know, rationale behind your no. But there is a great book that got brought up in a previous session here, which is called Radical Candor as well, and it's about kind of having difficult conversations and things, so I definitely kind of recommend that as well.
Well, I know that Debbie's very good, actually, because Debbie and I work together. But I guess the only thing I would add is that sometimes it's good to empathize and figure out what's motivating them. Like, why do they need it now? Or, you know, is it for another senior stakeholder? Do they have pressure coming from somewhere else? And maybe that can help kind of form the way that you approach it.
Absolutely. And it's back round to those communication skills as well. Yeah, go on. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Let's have a look. We've got a few more minutes. So Adam asked, with how many people in a design team is the right time to set up sort of design ops? Is there a magic number? What are your thoughts on that?
I say it's never too soon for design ops. And because in the absence of it becomes someone else's second job. You know, so maybe the answer is 3 or 5, but it's when it comes a point where someone else is doing this on top of their other job, that's when you need a design ops person.
I totally subscribe to that, because then I think you're sort of scaling proportionally as you go as well. I think at Skyscanner and also at Picsart, where I'm joining in a couple of weeks, the teams are already, like when I joined Skyscanner, there were already about 45 people. And when I'm joining Picsart, they have a couple people in, but the ratio is a little off there because they've picked it up quite late. And they're obviously taking steps to grow those teams, which is fantastic. But it just means that your leaders are having to hustle to get that in place because they didn't scale that proportionally as they went.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Soon. And I'm sure, you know, we could probably do another session on, you know, just like kind of getting that buy-in as well. And I imagine, I mean, you know, at one point it was UX and design that we had to kind of fight for and argue for and show the value of and things like that. And I imagine with kind of design ops being sort of emerging in that next wave, that it's the same, probably the same tools to kind of, you know, to kind of get that and often showing like the failures, you know, and showing by not having it, what's the impact. And that's probably a good way to also kind of, you know, encourage leadership to kind of, you know, buy into it. Let's maybe have one more question, and then and if your question hasn't been answered, we'll make sure we kind of move those into the community, and of course you can kind of catch up in the community chat afterwards. So there's one more from Johnny. So how do you envision the role and responsibility shift for product designers in a scaling environment, specifically considering ownership and autonomy might be put under pressure with more people owning less respectively? It's a big one for 2 minutes.
Can you have a bit more info from Johnny on this? The question behind the question.
Yeah, sure. Well, I also work with both Nikki and Debbie, so we're all Skyscannered up here. So yeah, so I think one of the kind of philosophies I have around like design at scale is that I'm seeing it as like more designers like designing less individually. So how do we think about like what do they actually own as a person? Like when we think about their careers, they're supposed to own something, they're supposed to have autonomy around a specific piece of work. But if you add more designers on top of each other in a scaling environment, you're not scaling the scope of design equally. Like what does designers own? Like what is the role in a scaling environment is kind of the source of the question, if that makes sense. Yeah, a lot for 2 minutes.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
No, go ahead.
I think a way that is solved, we call it at Handshake, levels and ladders, is really establishing on like an objective platform, you know, when you join a team, what level you're at and what are the expectations for people at that level. So if you're a level 5, you're expected to, you know, participate in this type of a thing, and you're supposed to communicate this way, and you're not supposed to do the following things. And then if a level 6, you know, builds on that, and a 7 and an 8, they build on that. So I think objectively, having designers understand like their role within a larger team and what they're responsible for. And then when you know, add the scope of work to that on, you know, a particular squad, you know, through that lens of what your level is, you can then determine, you know, collectively how you're all going to solve kind of the problem or what your role is in a particular sprint.
Yeah, I think on top of this, I think one of the main things is really, you know, as we scale, how do we effectively deploy design in the organization, right? So, you know, is it that every like feature team gets a designer and a product designer like works on a very narrow scope by themselves with, you know, some engineers and, you know, a few others? Or do we want to build more kind of like product squads that have like a wider remit, can work on, you know, an end-to-end journey as opposed to solely like a, you know, a very specific feature? And, you know, does every team get a designer, or do we have a way of like prioritizing the work that we're going to do where we can deliver like the most impact? You know, thinking about our entire capability of designing the team, where should we go and do work to have the most impact? And sometimes in the agile construct where every team gets a designer, it doesn't always lead to, you know, a great environment for design to prosper. So we have to be intentional about how we deploy our designers and how we work. And that's probably like one of the most important issue within DesignOps is how we do that. Considering how the organization is set up, you know, the battle with agile, for instance, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes back to that value piece as well, and making sure that we're working on the right things and the things that are delivering the highest value. On that note, I would love to maybe perhaps do another talk separately around just the value of design, because I think that probably you know, warrants its own. And we're likely, so we're going to wrap up now, but this will likely become a series. I think DesignOps, you know, there's loads to unpack there. This was hopefully just a brief introduction. I mean, I know that I'm super interested in more of the kind of career stuff, and then we can also talk about the different buckets, you know. So yeah, lots of ways to chop it. So would be super interested to hear from you all in the community about what topics are most interesting to you, and we can put some events around them. So thank you, Laura, for posting in the channel. We're going to be heading over to the Fearless community. We'll be in channel 2, community questions. So if you do have any additional thoughts or comments, or you want to kind of continue the conversation, we'll be over there. I just want to say a huge thank you to Laurent, Nikki and Beth. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope the community has found the session helpful. So thanks all, and yeah, all the best. Have a good evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye guys.